Welcome. Welcome all for joining. For those who are joining us through video conferencing and those who are joining us on LinkedIn Live. Thank you for giving us your time today. My name is Trevor Poplar. I'm the Managing Director at 50,000 Foot, and I would like to thank Conductor Software, and I'd like to thank the Skill Ranch podcast for support in today's discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a little bit of logistics in regards to today's session. For those who are joining us through video, please put your video to off and please set your audio to mute. We will have a question and answer session where we can discuss with each other live, but through the discussion, please keep your audio off to limit the distractions. If you do have a question, if you're in the video chat, please put your questions into the comment section or the chat section. And if you're in LinkedIn Live, please put your questions into the comment section. I, as the host, will monitor those questions. And when there is an appropriate time, I'll make sure I get Alex those questions so he can provide answers. As I said before, there will be a question and answer session following. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Alex Glassey. Alex is an experienced consultant, both working as an independent and working with some of the big 5 firms. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author, a speaker, and a facilitator. And today, he's going to take some time to explain to us how we can connect KPIs directly to people and performance. When we're done here today, Alex will have shared with you 3 ways or 3 steps on how to set up a new perspective in your clients. And I'd like to thank Alex for taking the time today to participate in the Consultant Mindset series. And I will now pass the discussion over to Alex.
Hey, listen, thanks, Trevor and Bilal and Colin, because I know you're all working to bring this presentation together. So thank you everyone for setting aside the time to come and visit with us. My name is Alex Glassey. I am the Chief Innovation Officer of a company called Conductor Software that I helped found in Australia. I have to say that my regular job, I get to speak to consultants and both inside and outside organizations around the world. I found preparing for this chat quite challenging because we live in challenging times. So, lots and lots of things I'm seeing out there, and lots of advice and stories. And one of the challenges, trying to bake it down into something that's really useful. So, hoping I've got a couple of main themes and a couple of minor themes that you'll be able to take away from you today. I just got off of a 30-minute phone call just before this with the national sales director of a large organization, and was talking about some of the same things that I'll be talking about today. And this person at the end of it said, what you're talking about is something I've not heard before, very unique, not heard before with any other consultant, any other advisor organization. And I think that's the key thing that I want you to take away from this, is that what we need to do in order to be successful in 2021 and beyond is to really find those unique stories, a unique way of telling our stories, so that these organizations can hear it, can cut through all the other things that they're hearing. We're all busy with so many things. So without further ado, let me see if I can share my screen here. Yeah, so this is a shot I took when I was in Italy a few years back. And what I love about this shot is that you have this gigantic castle with 3-foot thick walls rising from the ocean, and yet despite all that, there's this cheeky little plant just kind of hanging on the outside of the wall, just peeking around and saying hello. So that's the back start. Okay, so you should be able to see my deck The title here is How to Jumpstart Your Practice in 2021. For those of you who have only got 30 seconds more to stay with us, here's the answer. You want to reconnect, you want to reposition, and you want to renew. Here's, for those of you who have a little bit more time, let's keep going. So those are the Chinese characters for crisis. I know you've heard this before, but the Chinese phrase crisis is written with two major ideograms, and one of them represents danger and one of them represents opportunity. And we've all experienced the danger in 2020. I was speaking to a consultant in the UK about a month ago, and she was saying that the 6 months leading up to February of 2020, so just pre-COVID, she had billed out $1 million, million British pounds of services in the previous 6 months. And in the 6 months subsequent to that, so March, April, May, June, July, August, she'd billed 20,000 pounds. So, you know, it's been a tough time. So what I want to do is just take you through a couple of slides, not to kind of heap on the, the despair, but just as a reminder of what's going on out there in the world, and then how we can use that to make our practices a little bit stronger. So first of all, the majority of countries in recession. So we're all in the same boat. Particularly, I mean, U.S. Not so much, 0 to 5%. I mean, they're still hurting. We're all hurting. But of course, Canada, Europe. I do a lot of work in Australia, New Zealand. Only countries that are actually doing well now are China and some of the places in Africa. And I think they've got some Chinese investment. And so what they've, there's the lesson there is countries that have really hopped on to COVID early and controlled it seem to be doing or have the chance to do a little bit better. But the majority of countries are in recession. World economy is struggling with rising unemployment. So, what this normally means is that labor cost drops, except in this particular case, it's the unemployment comes from the fact that organizations are shedding work, and those people are now out there and potentially starting up their own consulting businesses. But businesses are really not spending a lot of money on labor. Huge drop in shoppers. I was blown away by this stat. All these numbers are recent. This is from January 24th. So we're in the last couple of weeks, all of these numbers. And I was blown away by this number here, 97% drop in shoppers. Of course, when you shut down and you forbid people from leaving their homes, that's what's going to happen. The global tourism industry is crumbling. I know that last year I had 10 flights, 10 flights that I canceled in March. I was supposed to be in Europe and Greece and back to Australia and that type of thing. All of that was canceled. Commercial flights remain well below normal levels. Here we are in 2021. It's probably 40 or 45% below what it was in last year and the year before. Car manufacturers. So why am I showing you all this? Because these macro numbers are just the tip of the iceberg. All of the smaller suppliers that lead into these larger industries, larger organizations are affected. That affects the communities that they're in, which then gets compounded by lockdown and social distancing, which affects restaurants, coffee shops, all manner of small business. And all that is to say that, yes, we're feeling the pinch, but your clients are hurting. Our clients are really, really hurting. And because of that, consulting revenues are also down, 13%. And I've already told you about my friend in the UK whose practice has really fallen off a cliff. All right. So I hope I haven't thoroughly depressed you. We've all lived through that. There is good news. And here's the good news. The good news is that we've been through an enormous year of uncertainty. And when we're uncertain, what we just do is everybody hunkers down. We pause our spending. We shrink our spending. We need to conserve cash. That's what that's what organizations do. But now we have a sense of the uncertainty is changing. So we've had COVID uncertainty. We hope that that's starting to change. The vaccines are starting to come out. There's some variants in the virus. But I think businesses and organizations are kind of going, okay, we think we know that this is about as worse as it can get. we trust that it's going to start to get better. Some of the political uncertainty around the world is starting to resolve itself, including things like Brexit in the UK. If you have any clients in the UK, that at least now is a known entity. And now through 2021, we can start to move forward. And that is to start this process of transformation. And why do I say transformation? It's because whenever we finally get to in 2022, whatever we start to call normal ain't going to be normal. Not the old normal. It's going to be a new normal. And that means that we're going to be having to go through transformation. And some of the early numbers or early signs of that are, for example, in the US in the third quarter, new business applications more than double the previous year. Makes sense. A lot of people are being kind of leaving their organizations and are on their own. And so, of course, a lot of them are hanging out their shingle. But venture capital money and investments there's lots of money out there, and they're starting to place bets. And so when you have twice as many new organizations, you know that some of them are going to continue to grow. Of course, all those new business owners need all the usual advice about what to do, how to grow their business. And so that may be important to some of us if that's our market. Other numbers. Well, we know that everything, including this presentation, this meeting, is a tele-meeting. And so we're now telecommuting. We're working from home. We're telehealth. I've had 3 meetings with my doctor in the last 60 days. Everything's cool. Just checking in. They've all been by phone, or they've all been video. And I know that the healthcare system is, has had some stress. There's a lot of stress, but they're adjusting. They're transforming themselves. Teleconsumption. You can't go to a store, but you still need things. And so we know that we're buying things in new and different ways. Every business, if you're making those kinds of changes, it means that you have internal operational reconfiguration right throughout the organization. Everything has to change. And so there's tons of projects out there, tech projects, change projects, project management. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And all these things lead into the need for strategy advisors. We do not know what the future is. We have to be looking at 2021 and 2022 differently. And so that means fresh thinking, means reskilling. We've got to change the way that we do so many things, manage tech, change management. We're putting our organizations through more change it was a quote in one of the articles that I read, more change in 2 months than we've done in the last 2 years. And unplanned change, we just have to do it. Project management, for those of you who are project managers, there is a lot of this type of work that is pending. It's just waiting, and it's now starting in the discussions that I'm having. And in my own business, what we're saying is that these decisions are now starting to get made. And then leadership support. This is a time that no organizational leader alive today has ever been through something like this, unless perhaps you've got a military background and you were in overseas conflict. So they need to have, and be supported in new and different ways. And that gives us all kinds of opportunities. So yeah, your clients are hurting, but your clients need you now more than they ever did. So three ways of kind of macro advice or suggestions, and this comes from the discussions that I have with consulting firms around the world. So my business, we build tools that are used by consultants. I said internal and external consultants. So I'm on the Zoom call staring at my lens, for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours every single day with consultants around the world. And this is the advice that, we've kind of collectively been working on over the last 6 months and even more so now. And the first piece is just to reconnect. Absolutely have to be in touch with our clients and our prospective clients. They're hurting, they're uncertain, they may not have budget, they may not have authority to spend any money, but they will remember who was there for them in the dark times. So call them, connect with them, share with them, ask how they're doing in that calm, confident, and caring way that you have. And then really listen closely to what's going on. You'll learn a tremendous amount. The second thing is to discuss fresh and relevant topics. Everything's changing, and they're looking for new ways. So as you talk to them about the changes and the challenges that they're facing, be really generous and share what you're seeing out there in the world, what you're reading, what you're learning. Share these articles, share the course that you just took, share the learnings, share a video. Make it as relevant as you can. Write up a little piece for them and say, hey, I was thinking about you and your challenge, and here's a video that I think addresses that, and right? And that way in your next conversation, you can talk more about them. So let them know that even as they're facing a significant transformation, you're thinking ahead, you're thinking about them, and you're preparing yourself to help them. The last kind of general suggestion is to update your tools and your services. And I'm going to spend a bit more time digging into this one in detail. But if the world is changing, and if our clients are being forced to change, if our competitors are also changing, and as I mentioned earlier, there may be more of them now than there ever have been, then when we really have to change to some of the old ways of looking at things, some of the old services, the traditional ways of looking at things, and then addressing those things, they may no longer be as relevant. And in order to kind of drill down into this, what I thought I would do is I would take you through a case study. It's a live study that I was personally involved in that helps me to illustrate some of these points. So I'm going to drop my screen. If I remember how to do that, I'll drop my screen, and I'm going to share another device in a minute. But let me just give you some. Let me just give you a backdrop. So this is a national retailer, and I happen to be introduced to the head of retail and the head of people through a joint acquaintance. And so they were gracious enough to invite me in. The organization's been around for 35 years, doing about $250 million a year in sales. And it's in Australia. And so, on the kind of anytime you're more than 100 miles from home, or 1,000 miles from home, or in this case, 12,000 miles from home, you're a perceived expert. So I'm sitting in their massive boardroom, and I got their head of retail, and I can't do an Australian accent, but he basically says, I don't know why you're here, Alex. It'll be a South American accent. I don't know what accent this is, but he's a big, expansive guy. He says, I don't know why you're here, Alex. We've been around for a long, long time. We know our business. We've got good people. We train them thoroughly. We've got great products. They all know we've got great sales skills. We've got numbers and KPIs just coming out of our ears, and we know our business down to the 14th decimal. We've got the best consultants that are working with us on that KPI side. And the head of the people says, I don't know why you're here, Alex. We know our stuff. We've been around 35 years. We know how to onboard people, how to find them, how to bring them on board. We find good people. We've got good training programs. We look after them. We've got good, pay and perks and culture and all the rest of that stuff. So I don't know why you're here. So I don't know if you've ever done this. I'm sure you have, perhaps when you're younger. It's really interesting as you're standing in a room, just take one hand and put it over one eye, and you can still see everything that you could see before, right? But something's a little different. And if someone were to throw a tennis ball at you, or a peanut, or an orange or something like that, you would have a hard time catching it. There's something missing. And the same thing, if you put your hand over the other eye, again, you can see everything, but there's something missing. And it turns out that that's exactly what's happening not only in this organization, but it's exactly what's happening in the international sales organization I was talking to this morning, and it's happening everywhere, is that we have people who take a look at KPIs and they drive their numbers and they drive them hard. And then we have other people in the organization who are looking at the people and they do different things with the people to make sure that the people are kind of okay. But no one actually looks like this and looks at them both. And that is something that is, it turns out, incredibly powerful. So back to, and here I'll share my screen again. I'll share my iPad. How's that? Try something a little different. So back to this boardroom. All right, so this was the quote that they ended up with. We know our business. There's no juice left in the retail linen. So let me tell you, so I sat and chatted with them a bit more and I said, you know, we got something a little new. What I'd like to do is just do a little experiment in your company. I'd like you just to throw a few dollars at it. Let's take a look and see what we can do. And they said, all right. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to bring the left eye and the right eye together and see what stereo vision looked like in their business. And so this is what I did. We started off, I'm gonna just make a graph here. So we just started off and we took a lot of their KPIs, and we took a key KPI was their sales conversion rate, sales conversion percentage. And what this means is that if 100 people coming into a store, 5 people buy, you have a 5%, 5 divided by 100, you have a 5% sales conversion rate. This is a number that they live and die on. And so they knew already that they had a high of 32% and a low of 7%. And they knew that, you know, they had a couple of stores up here and they had a couple of stores down here. And then they had all the other stores were kind of clustered somewhere in the middle. And again, they knew why the stores were high and they knew why the stores were low. And this was business as normal, had been for 35 years. You know, don't want to talk much more about it. We know that what we do is we do sales training, right? We do sales training and we got product knowledge. Those are the things that we do in order to make sure that we're converting the customers that are coming into the store. What we then did is we went out and we took a look at what's something called psychological safety. I'm going to talk more about this. I'm going to speed up my chat here a little bit because I want to get to this. But psychological safety is something that we all feel when we're in a group. So imagine you're back in school and you've got your classmates around you and you're having a great time. Some classes you felt great, you felt relaxed, you felt confident, you felt free to express yourself. Other classes, maybe different teachers, you felt different. You felt a little tighter. Time kind of went a little slower when you look at the clock. You weren't going to actually hold up your hand. You weren't going to volunteer anything. That comes from that sense you're feeling is called psychological safety. It's a term that's been around for since the mid-1960s. It's been revived in the last 20 years. It's a social thing, and it really is, we now know that it really governs the performance of people in the workforce. In fact, Google did a huge study, and they said it's the #1 thing that drives team performance. So let me just say that that's what we can do. We can actually take a look at psychological safety. Take a look at psychological safety down here. And let's go from 100 at the best to 20 at the low. You can go down to 0, but that's that doesn't happen very often. And right in the middle, we've got 60. And they knew that they thought that their people were going to be kind of all in here. We did our study and we found that we had this type of thing, right? We had some people who were feeling very, very not psychologically safe, and some people who were feeling pretty good psychological safety. So how does that help us? How it helps us is that we can do some statistical work that actually tells us whether these things are related. And it turns out that psychological safety in teams in this particular store and in other stores and in other sales teams that we've done working around the world are very closely related. And in fact, we can just create a little green line here. You can actually do some statistical stuff, and you can find out that in this particular company, there's a high correlation, of 0.347. That means that 10% or more of the impact from their sales their sales conversion rate was actually coming from psychological safety. So imagine that 10% of their business that they'd had no idea about. They're literally blind to this thing. And then when we take a look at the teams, we then took the teams and we went, okay, well, you got some teams down here, actually some teams down here like this, with low psychological safety, low performance, and then, better up here, and there's a few up here, and there's a few down here, and the ones down here. And the reason I'm making bigger circles is that the ones that are lower down actually have greater potential value. And it turns out that in this particular organization, when we did our initial analysis, we saw that there was $88 million worth of potential annual revenue that they were missing out on. $88 million on a $250 million firm. That is a lot. And we knew we couldn't get at it all, right? But we thought that we could get at about $25 million. And so what we did is then worked with them to improve the psychological safety of the teams and the leadership. We did not do anything with regard to their KPIs. We didn't do any more sales training. We didn't even mention the KPI. It didn't matter to us what we're trying to do, because they were mentioning that a lot. What we wanted to do is just help them treat their people in a different way. And we did this because each of these quadrants, you can actually go in there and you can do things like this quadrant up here. You've got good psychological safety and you've got good performance. So let's just support those ones. These people over here in this quadrant they're performing not bad, but they're stressed. Someone's just banging on and on and on about the numbers all the time, which is what often happens in a sales-oriented organization. And what we found is that there's a lot of stress in this particular quadrant. And so what we want to do then is we want to assure these people. We want to just soften the messages that they're getting in a way that are just a little more supportive, a little more warm, and yet still hold them accountable, but hold them accountable in a psychologically safe way. This team down here, in this quadrant down here, I mean, they're not psychologically safe and they're not performing whatsoever. And what we really need to do here is we need to really build. That's what we have to do there. We have to approach these teams differently than we approach the teams in the other quadrants. And then down here, in this quadrant here, we've got people who are feeling safe, but they're actually not being held accountable. So it's like kumbaya leadership. Hey, Alex, good to see you. Come on in. Yeah, great, good. Yeah, how's the dog and the kids and the spouse and that kind of management. My birthday is remembered, and I get chocolate and pizza on Friday. But I'm not really held accountable to what the team and what the business is driving at. And so all we need to do, we've got all kinds of psychological safety. We just need to start to lift that team a little bit. Just need to kind of say, hey, it's good that you're feeling good. Now let's do things that will help us get to those numbers. So there's 4 very distinct approaches here. So we have a new way of looking at things. We have a new way of quantifying and assessing things. And then we have a new way of being able to deliver to this organization. And the outcome of this whole thing was that we did some workshops, we did some coaching, we did some support, and then 120 days later, what we've been able to do is increase their annual sales by just over $20 million in 120 days. Okay, so that's the main concept I want to give you, is that we cannot just take a look at KPIs. We need to take a look as well at people. And what we find is that when we do that, we find that they're related. And the KPIs that are related, that you really relate to people, are the ones where the individuals have the ability to impact. So psychological safety drives behavior in business. And then we measure the outcomes of the behavior with KPIs, such as a sales conversion rate, such as customer satisfaction, right? I've got a person dealing with a customer. this person has the ability to impact how that customer is feeling, for better or for worse. And we record that with customer satisfaction. Other sales related things are the average transaction value, like upselling. I'm much more likely to be able to positively affect the customer's willingness to purchase more items per sale, more dollars, average transaction value. They won't just buy the monthly program, they'll buy the annual program. And then things like stress, single day absences, which we call sick days, and then finally turnover. You see those things rise dramatically as psychological safety in teams falls. Let me just go back to my slide deck if I can, and I'll finish this off and then go to some questions. So just to reinforce some of the things I mentioned. So this is the definition of psychological safety. If I speak up when I'm particularly in a social situation, will I be hurt, embarrassed, or criticized? We've got a little voice in the back of our heads that's always saying that. And if the answer is I will be hurt or criticized, I'm not going to say anything. The trouble with that is that if I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to contribute. And if I'm not going to contribute, I'm not going to collaborate. And if I'm not going to collaborate, I can't create, whether it's creating new products or new services or just a good idea, or creating in the moment. You know, I got a customer who's got a problem and I want to just work through that on the phone. And I want to work through that problem with them. So that's fundamental to this. We absolutely need to be able to communicate, and it's impacted when psychological safety is low. The ability to work, I'm going to become more productive the more psychologically safe I am, and you can define work in all manner of ways. But just generally speaking, that's what I want you to take away. People work better when they're more comfortable and they're feeling, they're just feeling a higher degree of psychological safety. Other than that, they become protective and they withdraw their work. They do less. They work. They come in. They do the minimum, and then they get out. This is a really, really, really important one. In particular, over the last year, I think what we've seen in I know that what we've seen in organizations is that people are less resilient. There's a lot of stress in their life. Their workplace has changed. There's a lot of uncertainty. All those things negatively affect psychological safety. So again, those ability to work and ability to communicate are affected, but so too is my ability to be able to manage change. So as we come into 2021 and we say that it's a year of transformation, your clients' workforces may be less able, less resilient, less able to go with the flow and to make these changes. Well, what if you could go in there and you could help that organization understand where these pockets of resistance and resilience were, and then be able to manage that? That would help to help these projects succeed. And then motivation. In the olden days, we would motivate people with money and promotions and perks, punishment, threats. That's the way, and we still do it, right? We still hold people accountable to the numbers and show ranked, how they rank in the sales numbers, for example. We give them big promotions and big perks if they hit their numbers, and then, there's less so, and the opposite if they don't make their numbers. This is the thing that we want to be mindful of. Contrary to traditional business practices, the best way to induce desired performance is to provide rewards that affect an employee's drive for significance, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and equity. In other words, help me feel comfortable in my team, help me feel significant in the eyes of my supervisor, help me to feel confident that I can make decisions without getting yelled at, and make sure that things are fair, that the work is handed out fairly, that people are rewarded fairly, and that if there's any punishment or scoldings, that those be handled fairly as well. Those are the 5 core pieces that together make up our sense of psychological safety. All right, so let me just start to wrap this up.
Alex, before you move on to wrap up, we did have a question in the chat. Would you mind answering a question at the moment?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so the question is, before the pandemic, many companies were focused on revenue and sales.
Yep.
Now they're taking a more focused look at teams and employees. Any tips on how you could redirect client discussions to the advantage of addressing shortcoming in teams and the psychological safety before the focus returns to sales?
Well, and that's a great question. So I appreciate that question. I think what the question at the core of it is, I'd like to modify the question just a little bit, because the question is presuming that we have to do one or the other. And I think that's the key message that I would want to get here, is that the two things are absolutely related. In that if you want, right now we are focused on people, and I think that's an absolutely good, best thing. Senior management is now really keenly aware how important the people are and that their people are hurting. And so what we want to do is we want to help those people feel more psychologically safe. We want to help them ease some of the hurt and the fear and the uncertainty and all the rest of that stuff. Just by doing that, we're going to positively affect our sales. So just the two things are related, and that's the key message that I would bring into Matt into senior management. That's the key message that I was making today. And in fact, that call that I had this morning, 30-minute call with a national sales leader for this international organization, that will lead me into already speaking to their weekly sales meeting of 300 sales executives and senior leaders around the world. And because the message is just exactly goes to the heart of that question, look after your people. That will then, the KPIs will then flow from that. Did I answer that question okay, Trevor?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me keep going and wrap up, and we'll have a chance to answer some more of these. So the key points: productivity depends on how people feel, like just full stop. And you know that from your own life. When you're working in a team and you're feeling good, you're just there. You're just contributing freely and openly, and the team gets along better, and it feels great. And guess what? You outperform, and the opposite is also true. The second thing is that as you're thinking about these new insights, they will naturally lead to new approaches and new services. And you saw me go through some of that. This assure, support, inspire, build. Don't just do sales training. Don't just do product training. Don't just do typical onboarding stuff. Let's now find a way to infuse those conversations with people-oriented languaging and leadership training that really understands that I got to look after my people in order for me to get to my KPIs. I can't just do one and I can't just do the other. I got to do them both. And this will factor into your strategy engagements, your change management engagements, project management, operational reviews, anything that you're doing with clients. There's a whole other layer of language here that helps to increase the likelihood, the success likelihood of their projects. And those are fees and new services that you will have, and quite frankly, that nobody else will have. If you've got fresh insights and you've got new services, not only will you keep your existing clients very happy, but you'll win new business that nobody else can. So that's some of the detail. Again, just a reminder, reconnect with your clients, reposition yourself, use this time to learn new things, learn new insights, learn new skills and approaches that then you can use to renew your practice in 2021. So thanks very much for listening, and any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, before we get to the questions, just a couple of quick points that I will share. As we're doing that, as I said earlier, please put your questions into either the chat or into the comment section on the LinkedIn Live, and we will get to those in just a moment. What I do want to highlight is and thank the Skill Ranch podcast for their participation today. The Skill Ranch podcast, hosted by Bilal, is empowering individuals and organizations to develop greater influence, impact, and help you achieve your dreams. You can find that Skill Ranch podcast on the link attached to the screen right now, or you can find it on the 50,000 Foot blog page. That's 50,000foot.com blog. And go and listen to the first season of the series. And Bilal is launching the second season of the series very shortly. I'd also want to just reinstate that 50,000 Foot is here to help independent consultants and small consulting firms. We are working day in and day out to continue to help strengthen the independent consultant, small consulting firm community, helping to empower, find engagements, and be able to be a competitive and sustainable business. So please, if you're new to 50,000 Foot, go to www.50000foot.com and connect with one of our members to learn more on how our community is helping each other. If you're looking to connect with any of us following this presentation, or you're listening after the fact, here's the detailed contact information for Alex, how you can connect with him directly. The information for myself, if you'd like to speak about 50,000 Foot, or Bilal, if you're interested in participating or want more questions in regards to the Skill Ranch podcast. You can go and meet us at those sites. You can see us on LinkedIn, or you can email us directly. Now, what I do want to state before we move to the question and answer period is, first of all, thank you, Alex, for that session and connecting psychological safety to sales performance really rings true for me. For those who may not be aware, I've been a sales leader for a number of years, and the idea that you can help an organization feel safe and then with that safety be more productive really gets me excited. And I want everybody to know that is on the call that Alex doesn't just provide the advice, that the Conductor software is able to carry you through that process. It's able to query and survey employees within a business and provide actual KPI results that are tangible to the community. And I know Alex and his team, Lewis, and the other members would be more than happy to give you a demonstration of the Conductor software itself. Is that correct, Alex?
Yeah, it is. I appreciate the plug, and I'll just say that our predominant market is consultants. Is that our job is to create the best possible tools that we can and the best possible insights, and then deliver those to consultants like this audience. And so we've got so we have a accreditation program that we have learning and resources and everything else to help consultants come up to speed on these issues. And then of course we have the tools, the software that then the consultants would then use with their own clients. So this is not us going to your clients. This is you walking into your clients with an incredible new arrow in your quiver that allows you to have a new conversation. So yeah, and you're absolutely right, Trevor. Lewis and I and the rest of the team would be happy to chat with any of your community at any time.
Great, thank you, Alex. So I'm going to open it up. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. If you're on LinkedIn Live, put it in the comments, and those will be shared with me, and I can make sure that I pose those questions to Alex. So if you want to come off mute and ask that question live, now is the time to do that also. So if anybody has any questions, please put them forward.
I have a question. How well known is the term and details of psychological safety within the business community?
That's a really good question. That's Brittany, right?
Yes.
Brittany from Utah,
Yes.
who now is in Richmond Hill, right?
Yes.
So yeah, perfect. So yeah, so psychological safety as a phrase has been, as I say, it started in 1960s. It's become more popular since about 2014 when Google released a study. By the way, if any of you want to have this study, let me know or let Trevor know, and I'll send you a link to it. It's really, really interesting. Called Project, or just Google Project Aristotle, Aristotle, and you can read about a New York Times article. In the last year and a half or 2 years in particular, it has become much more common. And again, depending on your jurisdiction, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom are really leaders in driving this sense of, it's not quite mental health, it's different from mental health, but they're really responsible for driving these concepts forward because it makes so much sense. Some people don't know about it yet, and so you might have to do a little bit of discussion with them. But it's a real thing, and the evidence is just pouring in of how important this stuff is.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Brittany.
Okay, for those who are on the line, we still have a few moments for any questions you may have. If you are looking to connect, obviously on the screen you can see connection details if you want to ask questions in private. If you want to connect with Conductor software or the 50,000 foot platform, you connect with both at the sites on the screen. And we'll just give it a few more moments to see if any more questions come in.
Yeah, the other in my call this morning, and I, as I say, I have calls like this, several times every week. But in the call this morning, it was this again national organization knowing they know everything that they possibly can about their business, except they don't. They actually are missing a huge piece, and they are really have become really concerned about the mental health and well-being of their sales teams, who are really suffering through no fault of their own, right? Salespeople, I've got a quota, I got to nail these numbers, and yet no one's buying. Like, things have slowed down, things are delayed, things are right. And so what do we have to do? Well, we need to look after those people first and foremost, so that they can continue to operate. And now that the sales numbers people are starting to release funds, make decisions, buy things again, we want our people to be as healthy as possible. And quite frankly, if we've looked after them when things weren't going so well, just as I'm encouraging you to look after your clients when things aren't going so well, you're going to get an enormous amount of loyalty from those teams, those people. They'll remember who looked after them when times were tougher.
I have a question, Alex, and especially in the current work environment. I know you have just mentioned about the situation, like the sales are down. That's one aspect of thing, but also our interaction, like within teams, within clients, have all shifted online now. And like we are doing those meetings through Zoom and connecting personally through Zoom. People are trying, but it doesn't replace the in-person interaction. So how do you see, if I would ask you to compare both the situation, whether it's online and in person, that psychological safety, in what manner would be more important in the in-person environment and then in the current online, and how does it impact the employers as well as the employees overall?
Well, so there's an hour of discussion in that question, Bill. Also, thanks for raising it. But this goes to the heart of what we're all experiencing. So first of all, managers who are used to having people in their teams around them be able to see them now can't see them. Like we just don't have access as managers to our teams. Teams are dispersed. So we've lost that social connection. And I think what we found in the last year or so, just how important this sense of social connection is. It is vital to us as human beings. Like 30% of our brain is given over to establishing and maintaining and being aware of the social connections. So first of all, we want to know that Zooming and working from home actually negatively impacts our sense of psychological safety, because I just simply don't have that sense of camaraderie and that social community anymore. Which means that managers and employers need to go over and above. They really need to figure out, how can we connect with people and get creative? And there's all kinds of stories that are out there about people trying to do new things, like automatically delivering things to people that, like a little gift or something like that to people, making sure that we have more frequent sessions, not just once a week, but maybe every day. Maybe in our sessions as a manager, rather than saying, "Hey, Bilal, great to see you. How are those numbers? You look, you're 10 points down off your target and where you should think you should be. Tell me how you're going to make that up." maybe what I do is I spend the first 5 or 10 or 15 or the entire 30-minute session talking about, Bilal, how you're doing. How is, are your kids home from school? How are you managing? Are you able to get out? Like really, really try to understand the person. If we do that, that is going to help to increase this sense of psychological safety and this social connection with our manager. So I could go on and on and on about that kind of stuff, but I think you get the idea. The idea is that people are critically important, and we need to figure out a way, despite the issues and the challenges that we've got, to connect with people in a way that we've never done before.
One last question, Alex. In terms of decision makers, when you are discussing and bringing this to attention, actually, we might have one more after that. Who is the key stakeholders that should be brought into this discussion when you're working with an organization?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Trevor. Thanks. So I think anyone who's looking responsible for numbers for a particular team. So whether it be the entire organization or a segment, department, region, division, call it what you will. Anyone who's responsible for numbers, those people they're really open to hearing about a way that, what you said, I can raise my sales numbers 10% by just dealing with my people in a different way, or okay, I'm open to that. Oftentimes you'll find that the HR people will want to have some kind of voice as well. After all, they're responsible for setting culture, for employee engagement, for doing surveys, for that kind of thing. And so it's oftentimes that you want to have those people at the table as well. Some of them are understand these terms. Back to Brittany's question, they understand psychological safety. They understand that psychological safety is kind of engagement version 2. It's amped up version of engagement, and or you go right to the very top. This is how our very first deal was, because the CEO said, we absolutely have to do this, and we're going to spend some money, even if it's just a little bit, doing an experiment to see whether this thing works. So operational people, operational heads, you've got numbers that they're accountable to, for sure. HR people, oftentimes in a supporting role. And then again, your very senior leadership who are absolutely numbers driven. They'll want to hear the message, but they'll want to hear the message expressed as, if we do this, it's going to drive the key numbers that you're looking for.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. There is no questions in the queue at the moment. So we will close off there. Again, if you have any questions and we didn't get time, or you weren't able to get them in, please forward them to myself, to Bilal, or to Alex, and we will do our best to share the answer to yourself and to the rest of the community. Alex, thank you again for your time. I think this is extremely beneficial to the community, and I would action everybody to think about how this could increase your ability to deliver great discussions, great results, and great products to your clients. So thank you, Alex, and I hope everybody has a safe and healthy February and rest of 2021. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, Bilal. Thanks, Colin. Great to see you all.